Peter Mitchell, welcome to the show. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero.
Thank you, Laban. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're very blessed. And first things first, how the hell are you?
I'm pretty good, I think. Yeah, I've recently turned 60, which is a big milestone. So, or at least I'm told it is. But I don't feel any different from 59, I must say. But there I am. I've made it this far.
Well, you look great. I think you're a Gemini, stalking your
Yes,
birthday.
I am.
Recently celebrated my own milestone birthday, and you look great for 60.
Thank you.
You looking forward to 70?
Yeah, I am. I am looking forward to 70. As a Gemini, there's two of me. So there's Peter Mitchell, the newsreader, and there's Peter Mitchell, who has 5 children and a wife and stays at home and in lockdown in these crazy days. So yeah, I'm blessed to make it this far.
You are blessed, and from some of the digging I have been doing, Peter, the overwhelming consensus is that you are an incredibly humble, likable individual. Do you think that you have any other legacy that you might leave when you finally depart this world?
Look, I guess I've just tried to do the right thing and be a role model without being a role model for my children. Just to say, if you are punctual, if you keep yourself clean and on the straight and narrow, who knows what will happen, but that's a good start in life, is to adopt those things and see what happens. So I don't know about any legacy, but I'm just grateful to have made it this far, and as you say, be in this position.
Because you're a man of many talents, and some of which include being a published author as well.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote a really amazing book on Peter Thomson, the Australian golfer. What was that experience like for you?
Wonderful. It was a fantastic experience. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, to write a book and be a slave to a keyboard with 2 children I had at the time then, and a wife who were trying to drag me away from the keyboard to say, how about some time with us? But I knew that as a project, to get it done, it was an important deal, just for me and for my reputation, just to say, I've done it. I've got the book done. It's on the bookshelf, and there it is. It's been published, and the whole experience of getting it done was surreal in a way, because it just seemed to be the right thing. Everything was aligned at the time. I just started at Channel 7 as the weekend news presenter, and I had a bit more time on my hands Monday to Friday. So I thought, I'm going to write that book about Peter Thomson, because he deserves one. There should be a book about Peter Thomson on sporting shelves in Australia, because of what he's done, winning the British Open 5 times. But there was so much more than that. As a very proud Melburnian, he deserved a spot on the bookshelf. So I took it upon myself to embark on this project to see if I could write a book about him, and through a lot of weaving and dodging, I managed to get it done in the end.
Brilliant. And you managed to sell a few thousand copies around the world.
Yeah.
Which, you was never really that important to you. It was more about the legacy.
Money wasn't the issue. I didn't do it to sell books. I did it so that I could fill that gap in the bookshelf and have a book about Peter Thomson, because there wasn't one there. And along the journey, I got to interview some amazing people caught up in his life. Not least him, as an incredible man with a deep intellect, who've often found it weird that he made his name out of whacking a little white ball around green grass. But he sort of had this quandary in his life that he never worked a day in his life of a hard job, of toil, getting his hands dirty, but he whacked a little white ball around and made his name that way. He couldn't sometimes put the two together, but he was a fantastic guy. In the end, initially he didn't want a bar of it, didn't want to know me, but in the end, he came around and we became not close, but he was like a father figure to me towards the end, and I was very very sad when he passed away a couple of years ago. He got Parkinson's disease, and his wife told me that after that he went downhill pretty quickly. So, you know, it was very sad, but I'm sure they'd still love him around today.
Do you think there's any other amazing athletes that you've had a chance to meet or interact with that don't have a book that should have one?
A good point. I should go looking, but that one stood out to me only because at that time I was right into the game of golf, pro golf in Australia. This was, you know, Greg Norman was just coming through, and was taking all of Australia on his back. And his story is amazing in itself, but there've been a few books written about him. But as he was coming through, and I sort of found out Peter Thompson, and there was no book about him. So that was the whole thing. That was the whole thing it was based on. And out of me writing the book, I sort of Seven saw my interest in sport, and I got a gig at the Barcelona Olympics, which was another wonderful experience, just to be there in the same town as Michael Jordan was with the Dream Team at the time for the USA basketball. Didn't bump into him or anything, or get an interview with him, but I was just chuffed that I was in the same city as Michael Jordan at the same time. Just one experience, but Australia had a really good Olympics, won a lot of gold medals, and it was a great experience to take back with me back home again to the family that I hadn't seen for a few weeks. So, yeah.
I think there's a real lesson there, Peter. You talk about the resistance that Peter Thompson had initially at you trying to write this book about his life, right?
Yeah.
And you finally wore him down and ended up, you know, changing the course of your life as a result.
Yeah.
Where do you think that persistence came from in your being?
I'm not sure, but it must have been in the background somewhere along my roots, because I've always bristled at if someone says, "Oh, you'll never do that," or all you have to do is tell me, "You'll never do that," or "You're not good enough," or "You'll never make it because of this." It becomes ammunition to me.
Yeah.
I take it on board and go, "Really? Is that what you really think? Oh, well, I'll show you." So it wasn't so much when Peter said no, it was, my view was, hang on, it's not your project, mate. This is my book. I'm writing it about you. I don't have to get your approval. And in the end, he said, "It's your project. I don't want a cent from it, but I'll answer any question you give me." And that was the door opening. So I said, "Really? I can contact you?" And he said, "You can ring me any time and I'll answer any question you have for me." He answered it in his way, not the way I was expecting, but I had to have the questions ready. That was his way of saying, "Mate, it's over to you. If you want to do your research and look into it, knock yourself out." And I did ring him. I rang him at his house in Toorak, and he had a holiday house in Port Douglas. And he gave me that number too, and I constantly rang him, and we'd be on the phone for like an hour and a half, you know, a couple of nights a week. And he'd always end it the same way, saying, "Okay, I reckon that's about enough for now." And I'd hang up and I'd say, "Oh God, it's got some great stuff there." Transcribe it all out, and away I went. Where does that fit in? Divided it up into chapters. Okay, that goes there, and that pretty soon you've got the skeleton of a book, and it's up to you to put the flesh on the bones.
How would you feel if someone came and approached you, Peter, and said, "I want to write a book about your life"?
Well, probably the same way, you know, because a lot of people think news reading is a boring job. You sit there, you look down the auto cue, and that's what you do every night. People say to me, a lot of people say, "Mate, Groundhog Day. You're doing you've done the same thing for 30 years. What's going on?" So it's not Groundhog Day. There's no two bulletins are ever the same. There's always something different. And if you work in a newsroom and you get that adrenaline rush from breaking news when a story comes in, or it's filtering in at first, like, you know, Steve Irwin's died at Port Douglas. He's been killed by a stingray. I'm going, what are you talking about? And it just suddenly all hell breaks loose, and it's, you know, Peter Brock and Steve Irwin died in the same week, and you know, you just can't prepare for those sorts of things. And breaking news happens all the time. So no two bulletins are ever the same. It's been a fascinating job to be there. And from where I sit at 6 o'clock and present what I present, I've had a front row seat in the news for 30 years. And the things I've seen, the vision coming in, it's just, I shake my head too. I just look at it and go, my goodness, it's just been a privileged position. And, when you say a book, I suppose if someone approached me, I'd have to look into it and say, well, what are your intentions and all that sort of thing, which is what Peter Thompson said to me. Show me what you've done so far.
Yeah.
And I did show him, and he said, oh, well, you're obviously on the right track. So I'll probably do the same thing, but whether people would buy it and read it, who knows?
Well, from the outside, it seems like you've lived a very fascinating life. And just on the news side of things, Peter, what is the most amazing news story that you've had the privilege of breaking?
Well, I always go back to the day Princess Diana died, and that came through at about 1 o'clock on the Sunday in Melbourne. And we knew that her boyfriend had been killed.
Dodi El-Fayed?
That's it?
Yeah.
Yep. But no one thought that Princess Diana would die. She survived. She's survived the crash. She's going to be all right. No one comprehended that she was going to die. And then the news came through, Princess of Wales has died. And we were just about to start a football match, live football match on Channel 7, and I broke in with the news flash. Footy commentator crossing to the newsroom, there's a big announcement. And I'm standing there, hairs on the back of my neck are going up. Princess of Wales has been killed in a car accident in Paris. And I threw back to the commentator, and his face was just white. And I've got his mouth sort of, and I've gone, I don't think I'm ever going to read something as important as that ever again in my life. And then along came September 11th, 2001. Talking Footy was going to air. It was a Monday night, and the buildings were, I'd gone to bed, and my wife came and woke me up and said, there's something happening in New York. You should come and have a look at this. And I came out and looked at, and I saw the first building go down.
Jesus. And
the phone went. It was the news director saying, you've seen what's going on? I said, yep. He said, get some sleep. We're going live to air. This is before sunrise even. We're going live to air from 5 a.m. And this was around midnight. And we that was the start of sort of rolling coverage. So I'll never forget that. And then along comes Black Saturday, our bushfires here, 2009. And I wasn't working on that day, but I was at home just looking out at that bubbling, hideous sky.
Yeah.
With that shocking northerly just throwing everything around, 46 degrees or something, and just going, oh, this is madness. And then the fires all sparked away. And the next day I was sent to Whittlesea at the staging ground there, and all the people were coming down from King Lake and who'd lost all their homes, and there were kids bawling their eyes out who'd lost their schools, their homes, all their possessions. Some of their friends even had been killed. And we're in the midst of it all and just thinking, my goodness, this is hideous. But those stories happen all, the big ones really stand out to you. We were sent down to Beaconsfield for the two miners when they came out.
Fantastic.
We did the news for a week down in Beaconsfield. It was magnificent. I'd never been to Launceston before. We stayed there, drove to Beaconsfield each day to do the news. We won the ratings every night that week, and the two miners came out. There was a happy ending in the end, but we don't forget the miner who was killed in the Anzac Day cave-in. That had a good angle to it because of what happened, but most of all, news is a pretty, grim business. A lot of it is bad news. But that's the nature of the beast. There's nothing we can do about that. And I remember being sent out to cover, I was at Channel 9 at the time, and I was sent out we were heading to a job for the sports department. And we were told on the radio, you're being diverted to Lang Lang. the Channel 7 choppers crashed, the news chopper, and we said, oh, right, okay, we're heading there now. And we got down there and we just saw the helicopter in the paddock with the charred bodies still in the chopper.
Jesus. And
you're just seeing it and you go, holy. And then you find out who they are. It's a cameraman, he's assistant cameraman, and a junior reporter, female, who we'd worked with and bumped into just a couple of days hence at a media conference. Here they are in the chopper. There's no counselling for any of us. You know, when we get back to the office, we file the story, and that's it. You get up, dust yourself off, and go home, get some sleep, and come back and do it again. And that was just the nature of the job. These days, thankfully, it's a lot different. There's help there if you need it, but I haven't had to go to that so far. But it's a tough job, and you do have to take that into account.
Wow. I was going to say, like, of all the experiences that you've taken on over the course of your 40 years, I think it is.
Yeah.
How do you handle these experiences? What tools have you got that you can share with people watching this now?
Okay. Well, one thing is that when I started as a cadet, I was told that there was a part-time journalism course at RMIT available if I wanted it. It's up to me. And I thought to myself at the time, I should do that in case something doesn't work out with Channel 9. I might have a degree I can fall back on. I could get a job elsewhere. And I remember going to the lectures and taking the notes. And one day the lecturer got up and said, now, I'm just going to prepare you all, because at some stage in your life as a reporter, you will get to see your first dead body. And it's up to you as to how you handle that. And I'm sitting there listening, and I thought to myself, I saw my first dead body about 3 months ago in a car. We were sent to cover a car smash, and there was the body in the car, in the wreck. And I thought, I'm ahead of you here, mate. I'm learning more on the job than I am here. So I bailed out after the second year, and I said to the boss, I'd like to do full-time. He said, yep, no worries, that's fine. When it comes to that sort of thing, like seeing bodies and the hardships and, being in the middle of Black Saturday, there's nothing you can do but disassociate yourself from it and say, it's nothing to do with me. There has to be sympathy for these people. Take yourself out of the equation. And to this day, I don't like reporters who make themselves the story. That's not what we're here for. We're here to show the viewer what's happened, to give them the truth as much as we can. And part of that is, the gravity of the situation. So with Black Saturday, you just have to report the facts as they are. And then we were there at Whittlesea, and a guy came down and said, did you hear that Brian Naylor and his wife had been killed and Brian Naylor was a mentor of mine, news reading mentor, and I was absolutely shattered. But again, as I was still presenting the news from there, you can't let that get in the way. You can't break down in tears because you're not getting your message across. You're not being a professional. And that was always at the forefront of my mind, was maintain your exterior. Always think of this as a professional job. You are presenting the news, and people are relying on you for that information. So pull yourself together, mate. And that's what we did.
Wow. When you're at home and you've got non-TV related stuff that you're dealing with, are you able to dissociate that stoic exterior and just be a human being?
Yes. Well, maybe my wife wouldn't agree with that. But, Philippa, that's right.
Hi, Philippa.
Yes, hello, Philippa. She probably wouldn't agree with that, because there are some facets of my life that she thinks I come in the door and I'm not Peter Mitchell newsreader anymore. I've always tried to make a big point of that. And part of getting over seeing some of the nasty stuff is getting in the door and playing with your kids, because they don't know me as, the newsreader. They see I'm their dad. So I get in the door, and that sort of immediately, it's like taking a coat off. The Peter Mitchell newsreader coat hangs up there, and then I become Peter Mitchell, husband and father. And I differentiate distinctly between the two, because that's been something that has got me through this far, is having that family life completely away from the news desk.
Because your family life is something that we've spoken off here that's super, super important to you, and the impact that you've had on your own 5 children. Why is that?
Because the way I was raised, Laban, was I'm the product of a loveless marriage. My mother and father both got together off the rebound. So they were both engaged and both cancelled them and met each other, had 3 kids. I'm the middle one, 3 boys, and sort of dived into community life. They always, Dad was always involved in Apex, Mum, Girl Guides, and we were all in the Scouts and Cubs and everything else, and they were always community minded. My dad ended up becoming mayor of Frankston, became a local councillor, and then became mayor of Frankston. They were in the mayoral year, which is your 12-month term from the middle of the year to the middle of the next year, a financial year roughly. We hardly saw them. They were out every night at functions, and I was babysat by my older brother, and we were basically just left to our own devices. Occasionally we'd come to, if they were, like Dad was opening a soccer club, we'd be invited, we'd tag along with them. But they after the mayoral year, they sat us down and said, well, because I remember complaining to my mother saying, we never see you, you're always out. What's going on? And she sat us down and said, we decided we're going to get out of the rat race, as she called it, and we're going to buy a country pub. It's something your father's always wanted to do, and we're going to do it. I've gone, boy, that means changing schools. Okay, righto. So we went and they bought a pub just north of Shepparton, a place called Catamatite, a lovely little place, made some great friendships there. But again, it seemed to be another focus for them to try and focus on something else to try and keep their marriage together. And in the meantime, the fighting continued. Like as a young boy, I remember awful rows inside the house, fighting and even broken crockery and all that sort of stuff. And saying to my younger brother, "What's going on? They don't love each other." And we were showered with love from both sides, put through school, everything. They did everything for us, but they just didn't love one another. And we never saw that. I got to see it when I started going out with my wife. I saw her parents and I said, there you go. That's how you do it. They're in love. Isn't that great? They were great role models for me, my in-laws, because they were just a devoted couple to each other. They respected each other, and they became my surrogate parents, being, that's the way you do it. You're showing me the path. My parents, my mother later told my brother, we only stayed together to get you through school. And we said to her, once they're through school, that's it, it's over. Now, we didn't know that until they said, that's it, your dad's moved out. I said, what do you mean? Yeah, he's gone. After he renovated her granny flat, she gave him his orders, nick off, that's it. He left and he was at a bit of a loose end. And it's because of that lack of love, or a lack of seeing a couple in love, that I strove that I'm never going to do that to my children. I'm going to, we're going to show them, that we can be better than that. And that's what I've tried to do.
Do you think your wonderful Philippa has been instrumental in helping guide you through some of that stuff that you wouldn't have even known about?
I don't know where I would be without her, Laban, to be quite honest. You talk, people often mention rock. It's a term often used, but she's way beyond that. If I didn't have her, I don't know where I'd be. I could be. I'm sure I would have been able to keep going, but just to have that solidarity behind me, knowing that when I get home, she'll be there with the kids and the house will be in order. And even when I'm away, it's all being looked after. Just to have that reliability has been an absolute godsend. I don't know where I'd be without that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
God bless you, Philippa. You've done a great job by the sound of things. You're the best way to educate your children seemingly is leading by example. I don't have any children as yet. I'm working furiously on it, and that's what I'm going to do. But it seems to be a reoccurring theme. Leading by example is the best way to inspire your children to follow, those core values.
Yeah.
For people that aren't your children, what are some tips or some guidance that you can suggest to help people avoid the same trap that your mum and dad ended up in?
Yeah. Look, it's difficult. I think, so you can only think that they thought they were doing the right thing. They just thought, oh yeah, this is what happens. You get married, you have kids. Oh, hang on, somewhere down the track they think, oh, maybe he's not the right one or she's not the right one. So find the right one. That helps for a start. But when you're that father figure, it's a massive responsibility to bring a life into the world. And that's what I thought when I became a dad was, okay, this is serious. You're in the big time now. You've got a life to look after. Becomes 2. We had a big gap and then had another 3, only because we love kids. It was great having them around. And they've incredibly, and this shouldn't surprise anybody, but all 5 have been completely different from each other. They've all got their different idiosyncrasies and personalities, which is great, as they should. But we've always just tried to maintain something that I learned from her parents, my in-laws, was that just try to do the right thing. Be responsible. One of the problems, the biggest problems I've found as an adult is that the most stressful position you can be in is to be in financial trouble. If the bills are coming in and you haven't got enough to pay, and you've got to think on your feet, and the school fees are due or whatever, and you're in financial trouble, or the mortgage, you can't pay it. We went through a time when interest rates hit 17%, and it's just, you feel like you're drowning. You've got to get yourself out of financial trouble. Whatever it takes, you've got to try and just be responsible, not bite off more than you can chew and chew like buggery. That doesn't work. You've got to be responsible and keep things in check. So that's a very important piece of advice. Is some of the most stressful times you can have are due to finances. So get them in order, but also just try to be your own moral compass. You know the difference between right and wrong. This is what we've passed on to our children. Always try to do the right thing. These days with racism and sexism, ageism, all these isms, pass them on and say this is the way we play it. It's up to you. Have a broad mind by all means. It's just sending the right message and doing the right thing in this modern world where you've got to, you can easily set your foot out off the straight and narrow, especially on social media or other platforms. There are so many pitfalls out there, minefields everywhere, and you've just got to be so careful.
Well, I was going to say, Peter, like in terms of what's happening in the world at the moment, I'd never want to make this a focus on the whole COVID scenario, but there's most people, if not everyone's entering a phase in humanity that no one's got any experience at all. There's no rule book anywhere for this. And the financial pressure side of things is certainly one that everyone that I know has been affected in some way, shape or form. What are some of the other mental toughness strategies that they can implement to help in through this period?
That's a very big question because we don't know where we're going. We don't know where this is going to end, if it is going to end. Are we ever going to be able to travel overseas in the foreseeable future? Who knows? All we can do, and my heart goes out to all the people who've lost their jobs and who've had to turn their lives upside down because of this. But, again, I'm a very fortunate one because I'm considered an essential business. So the news will still be there, and Channel 7 is still operating. It's been so important to have the AFL keep going so that revenue comes in for the game, but also advertisers come in, are paying Channel 7 and keeping our wages there. But for people in the hospitality business and tourism, and my heart goes out to all these people who've suddenly lost their jobs and are treading water at the moment, seeing their savings, if they've got any savings, running out, thinking, where is this going to end? All I can suggest is that you keep a rational head about it. Don't panic too much. There is assistance out there for people who need it. And if you do need help, the first thing you should do is put your hand up and don't sit back quietly. Find a good person or the right avenue, but please put your hand up and ask for help, because that's one of the most important things you can do.
I remember the Liz Brown quote off camera, and it was along the lines of ask for help, not so that you may appear weak, ask for help so that you may remain strong. Isn't that fantastic?
That says it all, doesn't it?
I think we're very blessed with the Melbourne University Cricket Club that we're involved with to be associated with Hugh van Cuylenburg from the Resilience Project. And through a lot of the work he's done, they've worked out through this GEM program, which is gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness, these wonderful mental toughness or mental techniques that we can help to bring us back down to that calm state. And by being grateful for the wonderful things that we do have, as long as you've got the hierarchy list of needs, you've got food in your stomach, clothes on your back, and a roof over your head, you're doing better than a large percentage of the global population. The empathy is very important, but not pitying. I think it's really important, the thing that you touched on in terms of remaining that stoicism as well. But yeah, reaching out and asking for help when you need it. It's there's people taking the dole. I had to jump on Job Seeker for the first time in my life. Mm-hmm. Always swore black and blue that I wasn't going to do it, and it's like, do you know what? Right now, until I get other things sorted, that's what I'm going to have to do.
Do it.
And you've got to. You've been in the media game for 40 years. You've been through recessions, 9/11, Princess Di dying, Black Saturday, a bunch of other natural disasters. Do things get better?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. There are good times. Good times come and go. There are bad times as well. It's a lot of bad news in there. But the thing I've noticed is that it's pretty much been the same journey all the way through. Yeah, there are ups and downs, peaks and valleys, but ultimately it's the straight line, and that's always been my rationale through it all. But when you talk about gratitude, I heard James Taylor say this recently: gratitude is the right attitude, and I'll leave you with that platitude. And I thought that's perfect. I'm so grateful for what's happened, good or bad. It's all part of that journey of life. And if that was one thing my mother said to me, which absolutely knocked me for six. She was a glass half empty sort of person, and she said to me, always treat life in a pessimistic way, because if something good comes along, it's a bonus. And I couldn't believe what she said. And I said, is that honestly your attitude? And I didn't know if she was taking the piss or what, or whether she was trying to mess with my mind, but I couldn't believe what she said. But I'm the opposite. I'm grateful. I'm positive. I have a positive attitude, and that's my view, is that good times are ahead.
You are an incredibly positive individual, and I've got two questions left for you, Peter. First question: what's your proudest achievement in TV or media?
My proudest achievement is my longevity. Being able to say, he's a reliable guy, he'll be there to do the news, when you need him to do it, just by turning up. And we talked about this before. Reliability, I think, is a fantastic fantastic thing to have. Just to be reliable, they can count on you, and he turns up, he's on time, and he'll be there. So that would be my number one thing.
It was noted. You were 10 minutes early, which is fantastic. A man after my own heart. If you know my father, Rick, who's he'll never be late for anything.
Yes.
My final question. What's your favourite dad joke?
The thing about these dad jokes is that it started out as just this, you get them in the Christmas bonbons. And I always enjoy, Christmas Day is certainly, but my kids were saying, your dad jokes are so bad. I said, well, that's the whole point of a dad joke. And they said you should put them on social media, put them on Instagram, which I was doing. And as soon as I've done them, I forget about them. But my most recent one was, what do you call the dog that's also a magician? That special breed of dog that's also a magician. It's a Labracadabrador. And the kids just went, what? I said, yeah, abracadabra, labra, they had to spell it out for them. But those sorts of things, they're great. They're fantastic. You're not harming anybody. You're putting it out there. Oh, look, if someone gets a chuckle, how good is that? I'm not going to be a stand-up comic. I'm not changing jobs or anything, but I might one day. Who knows?
Well, given what's happening in the world, Peter, everything's on the table. Yeah. It's been an absolute pleasure, delight. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us some really amazing, intimate thoughts and some really helpful tips. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Mitchell.
Laban, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me in your house.